There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there.
Bioware. We have news today, everybody. We've been a little bit
annoying.
silent for two reasons, okay? Number one, I've been very sick, okay? I got something called sexy artist, people. Am I right, ladies?
You're making me very uncomfortable. Please leave.
Honestly, in reality, I've been like, my abs are so sore from coughing so much. And I was
You
like...
need to do more core work, by the way.
I do. And I was like, Anthem, Bioware, EA, news, must get out of bed.
So cold.
Your lips are turning blue. I think you better stay home.
No!
EA.
Hurrah! It's true, ladies and
Hi,
gentlemen.
everyone.
We're back. We're talking here today again about Bioware. Unexpectedly, we've learned a lot more about Dragon Age 4, which was something that, you know, we knew was bubbling away in the background in the sort of the embers of the fire that is Anthem. The massive destructive pyre of Anthem has like burned to the ground, and now it's like people are shuffling through the embers, and they're like, oh yeah, there's a Dragon Age game in here somewhere. So today's episode comes courtesy of Jason Schreier of Kotaku. He wrote that big expose on the troubled development state of
11,000
Anthem.
words.
11,000 words. I'm sure Sam read every one of those 11,000 words.
Ralph read it to me.
That's right. Exactly.
No, I did read it, people.
highlights.
I was like, yeah, it's all great.
Rather than go through the entire Schreier article, which is way too long and there's too much detail in it, we're just going to talk about some of the key themes, okay? And I think the first theme to talk about is like the history of Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition, and how that influenced everything. Now, Sam, tell us about Dragon Age Inquisition.
I have played many games, but this is again a game that I have not played, okay? And I won Game of the Year in 2014, for God's sakes, and I still haven't played it.
Dragon Age Inquisition, it's pretty skippable in my view. It's pretty good, don't get me wrong.
Game of the Year skippable?
But yeah, it was,
Unsubbed.
let's just say it was not a great year for games that year. Look, the problem with Dragon Age Inquisition just had a lot of MMO-like busy work going on. You know, like very, very boring, empty open worlds, much like Anthem actually.
Lol.
Where they were like, cool, we need to build pretty spaces, and then we kind of need to get people to go out into them, but we don't have any interesting reasons to do that, so let's just make them do fetch quests, okay? It didn't hold a candle to Dragon Age Origins, by the way, which is an absolute, just incredible game. If you haven't played it, go and play it. Anyway,
Also
Dragon
game I
Age,
haven't
Dragon Age Inquisition was the result of a lot of crunch, right? They basically crunched that game super hard. Crunch, by the way, is a term in the industry where everyone just works ridiculous hours, you know, to get a game shipped.
Thank God, Ralph, thank you. I mean, everyone did not know that.
Not
God, Ralph is
everyone
so
knows
good.
that, okay?
Oh,
Some
probably
people
have
don't. Okay, anyway, so Dragon Age
Video
came...
games is a term, right, for the medium of all arts coming together, and you can play in the art form.
Okay, let's
It's
move
great.
right along. Dragon Age Inquisition had a lot of crunch, right? And it was very problematic because obviously that takes a huge toll on development staff, which was very much like Dragon Age 2, which was made in only 14 months, by the way. So Bioware at this point for these two games had this very rich history of crunching their games. That now brings us to Dragon Age 4, which they codenamed Joplin, and at the very start of the process they said, alright, we know we fucked things up with Inquisition, we know we fucked them up with Dragon Age 2, we're going to bring these principles to the table to make sure we don't fuck it up again this time. And these were the three things that they said. Number one, laying down a clear vision as early as possible. Number two, maintaining regular onboarding documents and procedures so new team members could get up to speed fast. And three, a decision-making mentality where we acknowledge that making the second best choice was far, far better than not deciding and letting ambiguity stick around while people waited for a decision.
I mean, that just sounds like Anthem
Does.
all over, baby.
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What
It's...
do you want?
So in Anthem, that expose that Schreier put together, he's like, the biggest problem was that no one had a vision for this game. No one was making decisions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounded like, you know, over a 5 or 6 year development, it was really only coming together, which it never really fully came together, in the last 18 months. You know, like a lot of the time they were just sitting around doing nothing. And I just think that they might have wanted to put these kind of ideas forward. But I think when you win Game of the Year, there must be something that's still stuck in management's mind. It's like, well, we'll put these in place, but it's okay. We'll have the Bioware magic. It'll come out if we actually don't follow these procedures.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's what happened with Anthem.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know?
I think that it's all well and good to have these ideas down on paper, but yeah, you're right. I think leadership were obviously thinking, well, if we don't get this right, we've still got the Bioware magic to lean on, which is obviously just bullshit.
Masters, are you ready? You want something? Take it! That's yours tonight! You want it? You want it? Take it!
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I wonder if we would have seen a very different product with Anthem if they didn't, in fact, win Game of the Year in 2014.
It's actually what Schreier says in his article.
Yeah, you know.
Very much that. Now, it seemed like for the beginning of Dragon Age 4's development, Project Joplin, they actually were following this stuff, and they did have a really clear vision for what they wanted to do, and they were, you know, executing it well. And I'm going to read out a big chunk of text here from the article, because I think it really shows how fantastic Joplin was sounding. Okay, so
we're going to young
bear
year
with. We're going to young year.
Right,
here we go.
Here we go.
Another Bioware developer who worked on Joplin called it some of the best work experiences they've ever had. We were working towards something very cool, a hugely reactive game, smaller in scope than Dragon Age Inquisition, but much larger in player choice, followers, reactivity, and depth, they said. I'm sad that game will never be made. You'd play as a group of spies in the Tevinter Imperium, a wizard-ruled country in the north end of the Dragon Age's main continent, Thetis. The goal was to focus as much as possible on choice and consequence, with smaller areas and fewer fetch quests than Dragon Age Inquisition. In other words, they wanted Joplin to be the opposite of the Hinterlands, which was this incredibly boring area in Dragon Age Inquisition. It was one of the starter zones. It fucking sucked. There was an emphasis on repeat play, one developer said, noting that they wanted to make areas that changed over time and missions that branched in interesting ways based on your decisions, to the point where you could even get a non-standard game over if you followed certain paths. A large chunk of Joplin would center on heists. The developers talked about building systemic narrative mechanics, allowing the player to perform actions like persuading or extorting guards without the writers having to handcraft every scene. It was all very ambitious and very early, and would have no doubt changed drastically once Joplin entered production, but members of the team say they were thrilled about the possibilities.
Whoa. Well, that was a lot of text.
Young out.
Now,
okay. Can I just say, that sounds like
a really
cool game.
Yeah,
yeah. Having played Origins, you know, Dragon Age Origins, it sounds much closer to that. It sounds much closer to Baldur's Gate, old school Bioware, where your decision making really mattered, which was a truly like narrative-led experience. I would play the shit out of a game like that if they made that, right? That was so fucking cool sounding.
Go on.
I was just saying, but
it
got canned.
It got canned, everyone. But I think that, you know, we've said this time and time again, but like, it's just so clear to me that certain games in EA's portfolio should be brand building and some should be money making. You know, this is like a perfect example of looking at like getting more hardcore gamers, or just getting gamers in general to respect EA, or, you know, Bioware or whatever, just making sure that they have good, solid games under their belt that make people go, yes, EA does make good games. You know, they do publish good games. This would have been a perfect example, like Anthem was hoping to be also, but it wasn't.
Correct. And so, EA though...
EA Games.
That's a frickin' demon!
Good old EA.
Decided that, hey, that sounds cool, but... what about this other thing? How about this live service thing?
Yeah, I think before we get there, though, we should really make... so the previous article with Schreier was really making the point that it was very much on Bioware with Anthem, that they weren't really pushing, you know, Bioware to put a lot of microtransactions in or whatever. They're just like, make a fucking good game, take as long as you want. But with this particular game, it does seem like EA was like, no, we want you to make it a certain way and make us all the money. Very different to the whole Anthem experience.
Yeah, exactly right. So Dragon Age, what happened with Joplin was that at some point Andromeda started to collapse in a heap, and so they actually moved the entirety of the Dragon Age 4 team, the Joplin team, to go and help like finish Andromeda. Okay, so it was done. And then they brought them back and they were working more on Dragon Age 4, but it didn't have a multiplayer component. It didn't have a live service component. It was just this really cool single player game, right? And then eventually Anthem began to collapse in a heap. And it was in such dire straits that eventually they moved the entire team over to Anthem, and they also simultaneously cancelled Joplin. They cancelled this vision for Dragon Age 4 that we just heard about, and they said, we're going to reboot the game under Project Morrison, it's called, and it's going to be built around the live service framework, and get this, it's going to be built on Anthem's code base.
This is what I don't understand. When a game is in dire straits, I mean, it's one thing to move an entire team over to try and salvage the wreckage. It's another thing entirely, I think, to be like, we're looking at a you know, a very bad looking game, and we're gonna actually now use the coding, use the, you know, the actual template for it, and then go back to the drawing board and completely destroy a game that sounded like unanimously in the team. They were like, this is a great sounding game, and everyone was really excited for it. It just doesn't make sense that you go from like, okay, let's save a broken game and then use that broken game's template to go back to a game that sounds like it's got a lot of legs.
The canning of Joplin makes a lot of sense in the context of EA's hunger for live service games.
Sure.
There's a quote in here actually within this article which is hilarious. This is what it reads, okay? It says, high-ranking Bioware staff openly wondered, did EA's executives really care about narrative? Did they really care about RPGs? These questions have always lingered and still do today. Sam, do EA really care about narrative-driven RPGs?
I mean, guys, have you played all the EA games recently? They're just fantastic.
They're
Narrative masterpieces, everybody.
It's been 84 years.
This is a ridiculous question, but it's pretty obvious what the answer is. EA doesn't give a fuck about this stuff. Unless they can monetize their game in the long term, they're generally not interested in it, okay? Yeah. So it's not surprising that they cancelled Joplin, but it is obviously very sad. You had a game that sounded conceptually extremely strong, and they said, what we're going to do now is we're going to put all our eggs into the Anthem basket, and then we're going to take that code base and we're going to make the new Dragon Age 4 from that. Now, just to be super clear about this, Dragon Age 4's engine is, or the way it's constructed, it's entirely an online game. The whole thing is online server-based architecture. So to make a transition from Anthem to Dragon Age 4, which is going to be primarily a single-player game, we hope, that's a big jump, right? The question becomes, like, do we have to wait to like access an inventory screen when we want to access our gear in Dragon Age 4? Like, do we have to wait through 2-minute load screens to be able to play the fucking game?
I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, with these types of games that do come along, it is very kind of reactionary straight away. You want to check that gear out, you want to put it on. Like, it's like, are you really going to have to like go back to camp to even check what you've got? But I think like another big thing here, what's really sticking out to me is like, we can talk all we want about Bioware not having a weak leadership. It also sounds like EA has a very strong vision that's just not lining up at all with any of these games. Like,
totally agree.
You know, and I think strong leadership does need to bend sometimes to like what other development houses are saying under your umbrella, or what the community in general is doing. And that just shows weak leadership, in my opinion, when you're like, no, it's got to be this way.
Yeah, but I think as well, like, it's an interesting discussion because I believe, I'm trying to remember the dates, but I'm pretty sure Bioware was acquired. Yeah, it was before Andy Wilson was CEO, right? Andy Wilson's vision is entirely about loot boxes and live services. That's what he did. That's what he did forever.
He
right?
came
That's
in
his
2013,
thing.
I think.
Yeah, well,
something like that.
In that ballpark.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's very possible that his vision as a CEO directly contradicts what Bioware's core strength is. It's like their thing is storytelling.
Sure.
Their thing is narrative, single-player RPGs. And then you've got a CEO at the top that's like, make me these multi-million-dollar, microtransaction vehicles. It doesn't surprise me that there's this sort of misalignment between EA and Bioware when it comes to this stuff.
Definitely. I think that, it really, if he was looking to accomplish that, it's really a long game thing. With these games, they really need to get out in a pretty much perfect product, make sure it's a really fantastic replayable experience that has a really strong narrative. Then, look, I mean, if there's the opportunity for a live service model built into a strong narrative, I mean, sure, but it sounds like he's just like, no, this has to be at the forefront, and the narrative and everything else kind of falls short,
There was one snarky comment from one Bioware dev that said the Dragon Age 4 is shaping up to be Anthem with dragons, which is like, holy shit, that's the absolute worst possible thing I can imagine.
Game of Thrones with loading times.
And then another Bioware dev said, no, that's not the case. Like, it's still going to be very much a Dragon Age game. It's not going to be Anthem with Dragons. So it's unclear where they'll land on that. But look, I don't have a lot of faith at this point in Bioware, given what a clusterfuck Anthem was, how hollow Andromeda was. And, you know, even before that, Inquisition was, I think, a fairly dull game. Dragon Age 2 was a very disappointing game. The Old Republic, which was just, you know, a great single-player, story-driven MMO, but a really bland MMORPG for, like, in terms of its end game and the like. So, BioWare hasn't had a hit since, like, Mass Effect 2, you know what I mean? Mass Effect 3 was fine, but yeah, whatever. But like, so you know, it's a very uphill battle for BioWare going forward. The other point they make is that Dragon Age 4 is a long way off. It's still in pre-production now, you know, it's not actually being actively developed.
It sounds like it's just been recently rebooted, really. I mean, if they've really put most of their team on Anthem, like, I don't think we'll see this for at least 4 years.
I think it's probably going to be in the three-year mark.
I think it'll be 3 years of just figuring out what the hell they're going to do, and then 1 year of actual development. That's probably what's going to happen,
Shit, we did the same mistakes
like,
again.
shit, we got a week until. It's like, I don't, they're the kids in, like, college that don't do their homework until, like, the last fucking night.
They're too busy partying.
Yeah, well, you know, I guess.
Playing Dungeons and Dragons. Anyway,
God.
that's the news. Concerning stuff about Dragon Age 4. Hoping that they can get it together, but who knows. We'll keep you updated. Good luck, BioWare, I guess.
Till next time.
Yong
out.
I used to be an adventurer like you, and I took an arrow in the knee. I took an arrow in the knee.
That's a frickin' demon!